Hey y'all. Okay, so now today we're gonna go over texturing the Sword and Substance Painter. Hopefully not more than two parts. All right, so let's get started. Um, so I've got it all set up. The UVs are overlapping in some places, but not completely. I've set it up so the sword blade is one piece, and then the UVs on the other side, other pieces aren't exactly the same scale. So if I turn this on, you'd see that they're a little bit smaller scale, but that's okay because we'll probably see the handle more than the blade. I don't know. We can decide obviously if the game you're making needs to have the blades not as important, then we can pull that back. But we can cut it up and stuff like that. I'm not real crazy about cutting it up because you always seem to find little flaws where the pieces don't meet correctly. So anyway, I'm going to keep the blade one piece. Did it like this. The scale is pretty close. Just means this will be more dense and it'll be even better, which the handle has more detail than probably the sword at this point. Okay, so collapse that real quick, and then what we're going to do is go File, Export, Export Selected, and then we're going to export it to wherever we export stuff. Let's try. Week 6, Monday. I'll call this sword for painter. Okay. And actually, let's do it like a normal person, which is funny to say, but okay. And we'll say, okay, I'm not even going to change any of this stuff. It says 2006. I don't know why that's set to 2006. Shouldn't really matter. I'm going to leave it default, whatever it's set to. All right. That's fine. There's a map on it. That's fine. So then I'm going to open up Substance. And in Substance, if you have two windows open, you need to just close one, or you can open both. So this is the UV, the textures UVs, and this is the 3D only. I'm going to say File, New, Select, and that's what's asking for is the actual model. There it is. Select, Open, OK. Takes a second. And just to talk about the layout here, I have only two shelves open right here. Actually, I usually have the shelf open too, but I usually put the shelf on a different monitor. But for our class, I'm not going to do it that way. But I don't leave this open because in this case, we only have one texture. On this, we'll get into multi stuff next week. On this, we'll talk about that in a sec, but I don't have it open because we use it for once. And then this one we're going to be doing most of our work in, so I throw that up. And if you want the layer or the area you want open first to be outside, then you want to make that one the first one you put down, meaning that, watch, when I open this one and drag it out, I want to put it not inside it. There, mouse, there we go. So that, if I want, I can't really move it back and forth, at least I haven't tried to, or it's easier this way. So I do it that way, and you'll see it as all this. All right, so if I turn around it, it's all good. Okay. So after you import your model in, the first thing you want to do is do that, do the baking of it, which is with that menu that I said we'll do it in a second. This is it right here. This is usually defaulted to 512. You want to probably put that up at least at 2048. And then you're just going to click Bake Mesh, and it's going to open up a submenu. And technically you have to push this, but it works if you don't. We're just going to use, since we don't have a high poly mesh, we're going to use this low poly to bake the normals off of it. You ask, why do we need normals if we don't have any anything to put in there? Well, eventually we're going to put our own normals in here from here, and also because the program uses the normals to figure out the calculations for all the effects we're going to do to it. So we have to bake it out right in the beginning. First thing you do, you bring it in, you bake it. If you have the high res, you bake it with the high res, and we'll get into that next week or on Wednesday. And it's done. No big deal. It doesn't even look much different. We have a couple of little shadow stuff going on here, but that's about it. All right. So after I do that, now I can put in anything I want. And that's where we come back to the shelf. And for this first class, we're just going to play around with making stuff look cool and not worry about how correct it is, or making your own, or being super powerful. So if you want to try something that you haven't done before, you could, you could fiddle around with all this stuff like we talked about in class. You could change the color here and make it, because it's not a fill, but this is a paint layer. If you wanted to fill it with a color, excuse me, you do this one. Then you change the color around like this. I can make it all red if I want to change some of the details inside of here. Now, the only thing that's really going to be noticeably changeable at this point is this metal and the gloss. I'm going to get this out of the way for now. The metal is, you need these on and off by just clicking on them. And the metal allows you to make it more like a metal object. The higher it goes, the more metal it is. But really, technically, the only metals are, I think, from here to 0.87. I think that's the only true metallosity of something by the scientific calculations that they made for the program. And then this right here will turn it on to more shiny, more shiny, more shiny until you go down to the bottom, then it's completely reflective. Or you can make it completely flat. And even though it's metal, it's still flat. It's like a painted metal, looks like. All right, this is the roughness. And if you think of it, it's just the pores of the object are bigger and bigger and bigger, so wider and wider and wider. And that makes them less reflective. Okay, but we're not going to dance with that beast. We're going to actually delete this layer. You can push delete just like in Photoshop. We're going to throw something on here and say I'm going to make this a wooden sword or something. Let's go down to wood and see what that looks like. So there it is. It's a wooden sword. I just dropped it on there and it's all figured out and everything like that. But let's take a look and see what we want it to be. Let's give it a lacquer first. So I'm going to throw a lacquer on there, and the easiest way that I found to do a lacquer really quick is this gold armor, and I just throw it. I guess I could do copper worn and throw it on there like that. So now it looks like a copper sword, but what I'll do, just like in Photoshop, is I'll change this to an overlay, and then I have this kind of lacquer finished copper weapon. And then I can turn down the opacity to 50% or less, just to give it that feel. And then I could come in and play with the shininess of it too, because it's awful shiny. So let me come in here. And what I'll do when I open this up, it's like a folder. It shows me all the pieces in here. And what that does is it allows me to come in here and say the dirt gets turned off. It's the little subtle things, worn surface, and then the base metals right here. This is where the reflective is coming from. So if I come in here and I turn down the metal a bit and I turn up the roughness a bit, now we're going to get something that's less like that. Now I'm just looking at the sword. I'm not looking at the handle because we're going to do a different type of texture for the handle, but it's not bad. It's pretty good for our first dance in here. The only thing that I do see that's an issue is that the grain of the wood is facing the wrong direction. When you make things with wood, you want to have the grain going against. You don't want to have the grain going on the where the strength needs to be. You want the grain going with the strength. And I guess I'm saying that wrong. The grain needs to be up. So if it's the grain this way, it'll break. And it's kind of diagonal because of the way we unwrapped it. Well, do we have to go fix our unwrap? No, we can fix that in here real quick. So I'm going to hide the copper worn, come to the walnut, figure out where that grain, heavy part of that grain is coming from. And it looks like it's this right here. So we'll start with this one. If we click on this, you'll see it says wood fibers, and you'll see this right here. These are all the controls we have for it to start with, and these up here. If I turn this rotation, you'll see it rotates everything in there. So this looks like it's about 45 degrees. So if we just do it 45 and delete, so we don't do 450, there we go. That should be enough. And then if I turn this back on as I go through them, I might see that another one needs it too. No, this one's okay. This one looks like it might. Well, if you want, you could do it to pretty much any of them. So position, angle, jitter. Let's do. Yeah, I don't think it's changing too much. Wood fibers. Yeah, you probably do that one. Yeah, again, this is such a subtle thing that we may not even see them. See, they're going that way. Figure where that is. So turn that off. That's it. Okay. So I change this to there. Interestingly, it doesn't seem to affect it. Well, let's just turn it off for now. Okay. All right, so rather than spend time trying to figure it out, if there's things that don't work, don't be afraid to delete them. Okay, so now we've got these two things that make up one texture that we like, this kind of lacquer finished wood. And we can do some more stuff to it, and we can talk about that later. But for right now, I just want to get you guys in the basics. So if we take these two and select them, oh, this isn't like Photoshop. If I take those two in Photoshop and push create folder, it would put them in there. But it doesn't in here. So we're going to drag these two into that folder. And that way it's in this folder like that. Now we have direct control over them, and we're going to name this folder Lacquer Wood. If I spelled that right. All right. So now we want to put, let's say we want to put copper or bronze on our handle over here. So let me open up this again, and we'll look down here, and maybe I'll just use a regular material this time. Something like pure copper. Hammered iron sounds good. So I'm going to throw this on the sorter here. And now everything looks like it's made this way. And it looks pretty even. I'm actually not liking that one. So I just come in here. Oops. Just come in here. No, I don't like that side. I think it's too even for a hammered look. And there's ways to fix that and stuff. And I'm sure that the guys at Substance have fixed that, but I'm gonna just try, let's try this one instead. I'm gonna throw it on top and then delete this one. There we go. So now I've got this steel based sword piece. Now I only want the sword handle to have some of these assets, but I don't want the whole thing. So this is the cool stuff. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna say we want to make a mask, and the first place we can make a mask, we can make a mask on both. I'm going to delete this bottom one so it's not confusing. And we can take this one right here, make a mask, and this one. Right now I'm just going to do it on the top one because really I only just want this to not show up here. So there's a couple ways you can do it. Masks are just like in Photoshop, and I can add a white mask or a black mask. White mask would mean everything shows up. A black mask means nothing shows up. I'm going to do a white mask so everything shows up, so nothing has changed. But when I'm painting in the white mask now, if I paint with this black, it'll show up right underneath. Instead of trying to do it and make it perfect and getting down here like that, I'm going to click on this little button right here that says Polygon Fill. I'm going to click on that, and then I'm going to come over to here, and I'm going to say just leave it on the Polygon Fill. That should be fine. And then I'm going to, you know what, I can also do this last one, which will let me, any part I grab of this, oh, I guess I have to do it in the UV 2D editor, so I'll do it this way. Oh, it's white. There we go. So I just grab any part of this, and it's going to grab the whole thing. And let me show you what it's doing. It's doing an island. If I come in here to 3D, 2D, it's just grabbing that. Because these are islands, it's easy to grab them. Okay? So now I'm done with that. That's it. Now I can go ahead and hide this. And then I can come back out. And now I have the sword made of that. Let's say I want this to be different and this to be different. And it looks like I have a little bit of overlap right there, which I'll have to deal with in the UVs. That's a UV problem, so we'll even see that. It's on both sides, so we do see it. But so what we would do is add another type real quick. I'm going to add a, where's my, what's in here? I'm going to add, let's try padded fabric. Okay. And it's really big, so let's talk about that. If I look at this padded fabric, it looks like it's really big. If we look at the pattern, the scale and everything, the offset, let's see, if we take the UV scale and make it 10, there we go. That's something closer to where I want. It may be actually too big, so let's drop this down to 8. So I'm going to put it in between these handles. Now, normally that would be a pain in the butt, but if we come back to make a mask, and we're going to go black mask this time so it disappears, and then we come to our, this one right here, and shrink this down, and we turn on 3D, 2D, and we figure out which ones they are, and we make sure this is to white because we want to show up now. So we go to here, and 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 here, and here. Oops, I missed. Here, here. And check the other side to make sure it's good too. Minus that problem I have with the UV, which is this right here, if you didn't notice. Yeah, so that's done. So let's go back to here and see if we have, I don't have, a really good gem one, but I do have one that looks kind of similar, like this glass visor. It doesn't have the opacity on it because we have to turn on opacity, and we'll talk about that. I'll throw glass visor on it so we get this right here. Cool thing about glass visor is we can take this and change the base to a nice red or something like that. Deep red. Let's get some good red there. Okay. And then this one will be a little bit of a dance, but we'll put a mask on it. Again, a black, oh, let's go to the top of the glass visor here. Black mask, like that. Oops. Yep, that was right, black mask. All right, now I'm gonna zoom in, I'll hide this now, I'm just gonna close it. Okay, that's the last one I'm gonna do. I'm gonna zoom in, and if I do it here, it's gonna grab everything on that object. It's not what I want. So in this case, I'm just gonna go polygon fill, and I'm gonna rotate it around a little bit. And, or I could just zoom in here and grab, it might be easier to grab this way. Oof. And it may not. All right, so let's do this. All right, so pull back out of here, scroll up here, zoom in, and again, kind of get as close as we can. If you do run over like this, oops, all you have to do is change this to black, come back to the areas that you messed up, and fill in those with black. Go back to white, and I think this one. And I think there's one more. And since I have them mirrored, it shows on both sides, so I don't have to do it twice. And we'll come back out of here, take a look at it. Ah, beautiful, except for that thing, of course, like I keep saying. And we're good. And there, and we get this close. Whoa. We'll change this to 3. Go to F. And then if you want to see what it looks like rendered, all you have to do is go to F10. And it opens up the render window. And you can turn off the dome picture, clear color. There we go. And then we can change the lighting around by pushing Shift and Alt, or Shift and right mouse button. And there it is. Our wooden sword with the leather and handle, and then of course the small leather mistake. All right, that's it for you. I guess it's only one video. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.